What if I told you that a respected bishop, known for preaching loyalty and faith, is now facing the one thing no pastor ever wants to see: empty pews? Yes, you heard that right. Bishop Wooden's own congregation has started walking away, and the reasons behind it aren't just shocking, they're explosive. Was it explosive. Was it scandal, hidden conflict, or something far more dangerous brewing beneath the surface? Stay with me, because once you hear the truth, you'll never look at church leadership the same way again. Bishop Patrick L. Wooden has never been the kind of leader to play it safe. For decades, his fiery sermons and fearless stands on controversial issues have made him a respected voice to some and a lightning rod to others. But now, the storm isn't coming from the outside, it's brewing within his own church. In recent months, longtime members, people who once stood firmly by his side, have started walking away. The question on everyone's mind is why? Was it doctrinal disagreements? Leadership choices behind closed doors, or something deeper, an unseen shift in culture that made people feel distant from the very place they once called home? In this video, we're peeling back the layers to uncover what's really happening inside Bishop Wooden's congregation. From the whispers of frustration to the shocking reasons people have openly shared, the truth is more complex than anyone expected. And trust me, the deeper you go, the more surprising the details become. By the end, you won't just understand why members left, you'll see how this moment could redefine the future of his ministry and what it teaches us about leadership, loyalty, and the struggles churches everywhere are facing today. So, stay with me, because this is where the story takes a real turn. To understand why members started walking away from Bishop Wooden's church, we first need to rewind the clock and see how it all began. Bishop Wooden has never been just another pastor standing in a pulpit. From the very beginning, his voice carried weight far beyond his sanctuary walls. Known for his fearless preaching and no-compromise stance on hot-button issues, he built a reputation as a leader who would say what others were too cautious to speak. And for years, that boldness wasn't a liability, it was his greatest strength. People were drawn in by his fire, his passion, and his willingness to stand firm on biblical truth, even when culture moved in the opposite direction. Families joined because they believed his church offered a rare kind of stability in uncertain times. Others came because they were captivated by his vision of faith, community, and accountability. At its height, Bishop Wooden's ministry was thriving. Worship services felt alive, packed with powerful music, electrifying energy, and sermons that didn't just entertain but cut deep, leaving people both challenged and inspired. Ministries flourished. For many, it felt like the kind of spiritual home they had been searching for their whole lives. Neighborhoods were reached by programs. Additionally, a lot of people thought the church was more than just a structure. A family was involved. However, this is when things began to change. The demands of leadership increased along with the church's size. Greater scrutiny accompanied a larger platform. Bishop Wooden's audacity was praised by some members, but others started to perceive that his tone was growing harsher, more aggressive, and less pastoral. The first indications of discord emerged when what had once inspired many began to intimidate others. While some members remained fervently devoted to Bishop Wooden's leadership, others subtly questioned the church's course. It marked the start of a gradual but discernible shift. However, what specifically caused this friction to escalate into complete departures? Things get even more illuminating at that point. Murmurs started to circulate among the congregation in the midst of Bishop Wooden's term. It seemed subtle at first. There have been sporadic social media posts implying discontent, whispered comments in the corridors, and tiny groups of members missing Sunday services. However, these indications quickly proved indisputable. Waves of departures were occurring as members left. Although the causes differed, a trend soon became apparent. According to some ex-members, the church has become overly preoccupied with control and authority at the expense of support and community. People spoke about a setting where it was uncomfortable to voice concerns or challenge the leadership. Others revealed that Bishop Wooden's combative approach, which had attracted them in the first place, had become emotionally draining. What used to inspire confidence began to feel like scrutiny and judgment. According to one ex-member, confidence was gradually eroded. "At first, I really enjoyed the church's energy," she stated, "but eventually, I thought my voice was unimportant. Decisions were made without justification, and you felt alienated if you questioned them." Doctrinal disputes were also reported. Bishop Wooden had become well known for taking strong stances on contentious issues, some of which went against the personal convictions of devoted members. Some members felt alienated, while others valued the clarity. It was about feeling invisible and unheard in a place that used to seem like home. and had nothing to do with theological differences. The impact of social media, however, was arguably the most unexpected element. Former members started posting about their experiences on the internet, starting discussions that the church's leadership was unable to ignore. The departures were heightened by the public discourse surrounding the posts, which ranged from sincere explanations to scathing commentary on leadership style. Private issues started to become more noticeable, garnering more attention and making more people reevaluate their participation. Bishop Wooden persisted in implementing his strategy in spite of these obstacles, stressing the value of conviction and tenacity. This was admirable to some. Others saw it as evidence that the leadership was not prepared to change or pay attention to mounting concerns. One of the main causes for members' decision to quit was their unwillingness to change, even a little. Even though this was only the initial wave, it prepared the ground for something much more illuminating, a string of departures that would reveal more serious problems with the community relationships and leadership of the church. The story's next twist, however, is even more unexpected, because it concerns insiders who initially supported Bishop Wooden's leadership before abandoning it. The initial surge of departures was merely the beginning. Rumors of internal strife started to circulate as more people departed. Testimonies from individuals who had demonstrated a strong commitment to the church. Some members of leadership teams started to voice concerns that had been kept under wraps for years. These were no idle grievances. These first-hand recollections provided a far more nuanced view of Bishop Wooden's service. Members were unaware of how much more centralized the church's internal decision-making was. According to several insiders, although the public witnessed a self-assured leader giving stirring speeches in private, many believed the leadership was inflexible and distant. Program, funding, and even staff decisions were frequently decided without open communication or consultation. Some seasoned volunteers felt helpless as a result of this. The church was receiving their hearts, time, and efforts. However, they had minimal control over its operation. However, there were more revelations to come. Former employees spoke of loyalty tests and a culture of dread. In certain situations, voicing concerns about financial difficulties or ministry procedures may result in public censure or exclusion. According to one source, it wasn't about malice, but about control. The atmosphere was so tense that individuals were hesitant to talk. Talented members were gradually leaving because it seemed safer to do so than to stay and struggle. Conflicts over ideology and public messaging were mentioned in some of the most startling tales. Bishop Wooden had always been outspoken about his views on social issues and his interpretations of the Bible. However, sources claim that disputes over method and tone turned personal. Those who had previously supported his leadership were quietly pushed out or marginalized for voicing other opinions. The crowd wasn't always able to see these disputes, which made the departures much more perplexing and upsetting for those in the pews. Emotional strain and burnout were also reported. Staff members and volunteers who had dedicated years to the church spoke of feeling emotionally spent. A silent crisis resulted from public scrutiny and the idea that one should constantly be in perfect alignment with leadership. Numerous insiders acknowledged that although they adored the group and the cause, the toll on their mental and emotional well-being was too great. The fact that these insider disclosures highlight a conflict that all organizations deal with is arguably their most remarkable feature, striking a balance between an inclusive community and capable leadership. There was no denying Bishop Wooden's vision and enthusiasm. At what cost, however, was the question. Once loyal members began to doubt the church's ability to maintain both a welcome, encouraging environment and capable leadership, this is where a lot of his previous supporters were taken aback. According to some insiders, there were times when the church leadership may have foreseen these departures, but nevertheless decided not to deal with the fundamental problems. Some ex-members claimed that it went beyond simple arguments or miscommunications. For some, it was a pattern that, once identified, made leaving all but inevitable. As the narrative progressed, it became evident that the departures were neither isolated nor random. They were a part of a greater story about human complexity, expectations, devotion, and personal conviction. Even more shocking is the fact that some of the most well-known figures in the church subtly came to the conclusion that the only way to maintain their integrity and religion was to leave. Most shocking discoveries, however, were still to come. We'll learn the touching tales of families and seasoned members in the following section. Individuals whose testimony Members in the following section. Individuals whose testimony highlight the human side of this dispute and whose lives were significantly influenced by the departures. The human cost of the departures is the true narrative. Even as the insider disclosures highlight leadership and structural problems, every attendance figure and member left statistic conceals a person, a family, or a life that has been upended. Leaving Bishop Wooden's church was not an easy choice for many members. It was a spiritual and emotional battle that left deep wounds. Think about the families who had attended the church for many generations. Some grandparents passed on their faith traditions to their children and grandchildren by attending since the church's founding. They didn't just decide to leave because they didn't agree with the leadership. There was a deep sense of loss. According to a long-standing member, "My children were baptized here, and this church was my home." Young adults and teens faced a different kind of challenge. Many had grown up idolizing Bishop Wooden and had looked up to him as a mentor and role model, so for them, witnessing the church they loved fall apart from the inside was a painful betrayal. "My family celebrated milestones here, and leaving felt like leaving a piece of my soul behind." The departures were not clean or easy, often involving public explanations, awkward confrontations, and a constant sense of judgment from friends who stayed behind. They struggled to reconcile their faith with the growing discord around them. Some turned to other churches, some drifted from organized religion altogether, and some were left questioning their own beliefs. Marriages and friendships were put to the test. Couples who had worshipped together for years were at odds over whether to stay or leave. And you loved the people and the mission, but every Sunday felt like you were walking into a storm. One former volunteer compared it to living in two different worlds at once. The stories of those who felt spiritually abandoned were perhaps the most heartbreaking, but there was a ripple effect of tension and heartbreak that spread beyond the church walls into homes and workplaces, with longtime friends split between those who remained faithful to Bishop Wooden and others who felt forced to leave for their own peace of mind. For several members, leaving was more than a decision. It was a painful separation from the people and activities that had fostered their faith. One woman emotionally recalled, "I spent 20 years here." These members had looked to the church for direction, hope, and support during trying times. "I felt as though I had lost my spiritual family when I departed." It was more than a quarrel. It has to do with losing a piece of myself. Nevertheless, there were lessons to be learned despite the heartache. Many who departed talked about their newfound clarity, personal development, and bravery in making morally sound choices. Although leaving was emotionally draining, it also served as a springboard for introspection and rejuvenation. A nuanced truth emerges from the human stories. Members' reasons for leaving included issues with personal integrity, emotional well-being, and the desire to find a place where their faith seemed secure and sustaining, in addition to issues with leadership and doctrine. Even though these tales are heartbreaking, they offer important insight into the larger ramifications of community relations and church leadership. The lessons learned, community relations, and church leadership. The lessons learned and repercussions will be discussed in the following part, along with how Bishop Wooden's experience can serve as a warning and a guide for religious leaders worldwide, and why this narrative is significant to more than one congregation. There is more to Bishop Wooden's church's narrative than internal strife, disagreements, and departures. It is a warning story with lessons for congregation members, leaders, and anybody else interested in creating a vibrant community. These incidents have far-reaching consequences that go well beyond a single pulpit, providing valuable perspectives on communication, leadership, and the difficult balancing act between power and empathy. The value of openness is among the most obvious teachings. Decisions were frequently taken behind closed doors, leaving volunteers and congregants feeling alienated and helpless. According to a number of former members and insiders, over time, a lack of open communication can undermine trust, even though good leadership is crucial. This serves as a reminder that people are not merely subservient to authority, they adhere to leaders they respect and identify with. Almost immediately, allegiance can vanish when there is no longer any transparency. The necessity of flexibility is another lesson. Members were initially drawn to Bishop Wooden's audacious strategy, but as the congregation changed, they believed his methods remained inflexible and uncompromising. According to the theory, Even the most charismatic leaders need to adjust to the demands of their community without sacrificing their moral principles. Active listening, empathy, and flexibility are not traits of weakness. Long-term engagement and connection maintenance depend on them. The most important lesson is perhaps the human component. A community cannot be sustained by leadership and vision alone, like any other institution. Churches are based on emotional ties, connections, and trust. Even the most inspired ministry can break down if these relationships are ignored. The testimonies of the volunteers, families, and young people who departed Bishop Wooden's church demonstrate the serious repercussions of losing touch with the core members of a community. The dynamics of contemporary ministries are also influenced by social media and public opinion. Once private departures are now widely publicized, and stories circulate swiftly on the internet, leaders need to understand that their deeds and inactions have an impact that extends well beyond the sanctuary, affecting not just their current congregation, but also how the general public views their ministry. Never before have openness, responsibility, and response been so important. Lastly, there is a lesson about courage and ethics. Many members left because they refused to sacrifice their morals or emotional health, not because they lost faith. Their experiences serve as a reminder that faith is very personal and that leaving an institution can occasionally be a sign of spiritual strength rather than weakness. Communities and leaders alike must understand that respecting one's conscience is just as crucial as adhering to corporate objectives or dogma. Bishop Wooden's story ultimately has repercussions that serve as a warning and a guide for leaders. It serves as a reminder to strike a balance between vision and human connection, conviction and adaptability, and authority and empathy. It is an exhortation to members to respect their emotions, values, and gut feelings, even if doing so necessitates making tough choices. Additionally, it serves as a reminder to all viewers that communities, religious, professional, or social, succeed when members feel appreciated, recognized, and visible. As the story draws to a close, it leaves us with one more sobering reflection. Even though they hurt, departures are rarely pointless. They provide an opportunity for introspection, development, and eventually transformation while exposing the stresses, disputes, and flaws present in any group. There is much more to the story of Bishop Wooden and the people of his church who departed than just departures. It provides insight into the nuanced truths of human connection, faith, and leadership. We've looked at how a church that had flourished under the fervent leadership of a fearless pastor finally had to deal with waves of departing members. The emotional toll on families, volunteers, and congregants who had dedicated their souls for years has been witnessed, as have the first subtly noticeable indications of dissatisfaction and the insider disclosures that revealed hidden conflicts. The story's dualism is what really sticks out. Your own relationships and communities. On the one hand, do people have a voice? Do people feel appreciated? And if not, how can you close the distance before it's too late? Sometimes the hardest choices, like leaving a place you love, are the ones that eventually result in development, understanding, and a new sense of purpose. Make sure to like this video, share it with others who might find it relatable, and leave a comment below with your opinions if you thought this story was shocking, thought-provoking, or informative. Have you ever had to make the difficult but necessary decision to leave? Your experiences would be greatly appreciated. For more insightful articles about faith, leadership, and the disputes that influence communities, don't forget to subscribe. Ultimately, these tales are about more than simply a church. They deal with individuals, their decisions, and the realities that we can't always ignore.